G'day guys, so this is the second last part of the build of the Church in Winter bookends, and just a quick spin round to show you the finished thing like I do at the beginning of this. This is the painting thing where I started with a base coat and primed. There are so many videos on YouTube saying prime, and I thoroughly support priming, and especially on the plastic models and on surfaces that are not absorbent. Normally it's always a really good job to use a proper primer and get it sorted out. So in this one I just ran it through the airbrush to make life a little bit simpler for myself rather than trying to brush it all on because it's all fiddly. Then it was a matter of just beginning the painting process, so I decided to start with the white on the church and do the walls white, and then the yellow on the windows and the brickwork. Now this yellow didn't end up staying because when I consulted later in the process, the brickwork, it looked a little bit cartoony, and the brickwork isn't actually cartoony. So I painted the inside black. Now this is a thing that I neglected to do on the other side before I glued its backing thing in, and later in this video actually think later in the next video part you'll see that I have to put the brush through the window openings in that second side to get it black. Really good idea to do your black in there because then you don't get any reflection. So once I finished this, I was able to glue in the window pane and the doors, and window pane and the door, and that meant that that was all done. So that's just some glamour shots showing process in progress shots, and then I got the window pane. I also did a wash on the stonework, but this was before I realised about the colour change, so mistakes were made and things were done more than once in some parts of this model. So I glued the glass in on the window, which is a bit of perspex that's cut from a toy box. So if you get toys that are in bubble thing, it's not a bad idea to cut out the flat bits so that you can have some check windows. And when the back glues onto that, there's no light in there, and so you don't see anything behind those windows. I put a bit of black cardboard behind the door just in case it didn't, so it wouldn't reflect. Throughout the course of the build there was lots and lots of filling. It happened at different stages. I had already filled the back of where the roofs went on. I'd filled around where the road meets the bookends. I'd filled up the sides, and then as the project goes on I had to fill again. Making the downpipe, I got a bit of dowel and cut it to length and then sanded it on angles till I got the angles right for the downpipes, glued them together. I did the bottom first and made sure that it came up off the road, covered the corbel at the bottom and went up and was the right sort of height, and then after I'd glued that together, let it rest, came back the next day, did the same thing to the top. So clean out the end of your zip glue with a paper clip is always a handy tip. Glue it together, get it so it had the bend shape right for what was in the picture and coming down over the skirting corbel thing at the bottom. And there you go. Quite chuffed with that actually when it was done. And it covered up that join brilliantly. I wasn't sure exactly which side to put it on initially, but after I'd glued the top end on as well as the bottom end on, it was very easy to decide which end was going to be which side was going to get the downpipe on it to best do it. The downpipe has brackets that hold it onto the wall, same as all downpipes do. If you want to, go out and check your own house. And so I started trying to super glue these on to make the brackets on. They're only thin, so I started trying to super glue a little slice of paper, but super glue doesn't always, depending on your glue, doesn't always like paper. So I went with good old PVA and just smothered it on and then wound it around until I was happy with the thickness and trimmed it off. Did that 3 times, so there's 3 brackets holding it to the wall, and then just started to paint it. Same colour as the roof was the base colour for the street and the block wall, and another coat on the roof. And it's also the colour that I used to do all of the sections that denote not part of the model. So the in-between bits when the model splits in half, the back of where the roof line is above the bookend, all just a uniform sort of a grey. At this point in time, I hadn't decided whether was going to try and do a blue sky in the section that has the doorway and the window in it, or what to do. In the end, I opted to just paint it black, so that same thing, it reads as not part of the model that you're looking at. After I'd done that, I had to go around all the wash bit on the doorways and paint it white again. Working with white's always a little bit tricky. I'm just using a house paint tester pot here. It's not a hobby paint, so sometimes the coverage can be a little bit ordinary and you may have to do multiple coats. I did, but I had fun. It was just whenever I had a bit of time over the days that I did this, I just came back and put another coat on until I was happy with the whiteness of the block work. It was going to get some washes and some extra stony looking effect put into it, so the fact that it was a little bit see-through to the primary places didn't really worry me, but I didn't want it to look like a really thin coat of paint. I actually wanted it to look like wash that's been applied many times over the years that the church has been going. Painting around the windows here and all the blockwork, only to later discover that I was changing the colour, and anyway, you can see. So this was just a lengthy process. I've trying to show you as detailed as is not boring to show. I also started to stipple the white paint to give it more of a stone effect, so a stucco-y or rendered type thing. Then a different grey to do the street. It's slightly lighter than the grey that's on the roof and around all the non-model parts. This same thing, just time and patience and filling it all in, trying to get it even over the distance so that there wasn't brush marks in it, but so that there also wasn't patchiness or looking like a coloured in picture rather than a flat colour, uniform colour. These again are just tester pots. This is normal house paint, so a 250ml or a 500ml only costs you in Australia about $10.50 or something other like that, and so you get a real lot of paint for a real long time. I've used this particular grey on stonework for many years with many models. After you've opened and closed them for a bunch of times, they do tend to get a bit crusty and sometimes you lose your paint, but it's miles cheaper still than trying to buy the little ones, even though the little ones dry much faster than regular house paint does. So that's a basic paint step onto this. Then as I said, I wanted to make it more stony and have bleed through and things like that, so I did a fairly strong browny grey over the things, which makes it look quite ordinary when you're looking at it at this stage, but it gets washes and things over the top, so it gets a lot lighter. If you do it with a very pale one to start with, when you cover it up with your white again, you don't see it, so it's always good at this when you're doing that sort of thing to make it really dark. Then I lightened up the grey that I'd used on the base stone with some white and painted in the join paving stones in between the cobblestones. I also started to pick out stones on the stone wall, because the wall isn't one colour, stones aren't one colour, and it just makes them look a little bit more natural. This process was several colours, picking out the rock colours. There was lighter colours and darker colours referenced in the photos and checking things out, and then trying to tidy everything up and getting it all nice. I then put another mix of a little bit darker grey into that one and splotched it onto the cobblestoney bits so that they looked a little bit more natural, not just the same colour. Came back with the white and stippled over the top of the brown that I'd put on. So as you can see, you can still see a bit of the brown through. and the stippling process with the white also helps it to look a little bit more like a stoned wash stone rather than a paper faced piece of foam. And the process is, this is not rocket science, you just do it till it looks nice until you've got it on there. Tidying up the window frames, trying to keep everything so that it's the same level of colour that's gone on there. And that's just about it for this video. The effect turned out really good for the stonework, it looks good. This is just a couple of glamour shots near the end. The next video, I finish off the painting, I paint the figurines, I glue them down, and I do all the snow bit, and also attach a sign and another window. So I had to make the little windows for to go in the top of this one. So same process as with most things, I cut out the window hole first and then I cut around the frame. I find that I'm less likely to get tears out and ruin the windows that way. After consulting with the pictures, I realised that the colour for the windows that I'd done them was the better colour for all of the yellow parts, the shutters and everything. So all of those pieces got another fresh up coat and changed the colour, which looks a lot more like the lighting in the picture and was a lot less cartoony than the bright yellow was. The yellow was a good base, but it was a whole lot of extra work that I probably didn't need to have done originally. And so just a involved process where you just go through and do it and do it and do it, paying attention to what you're doing. I'm just using basic brushes. Some of them are Citadel ones, some of them are Army Painter ones, and some of them are just cheap ones that I got from a news agency for $2 for 6 or 7 of them. If you get a good tip on a brush is a brush. Definitely better quality ones are easy to do detailed work and things, but if you can't afford the big ones, just buy the cheap ones. So that's where we're up to at the end of this one. The windows go in the next bit, some more mucking around, painting through the windows as I explained with the grey because I could see behind them, and finishing it all off. So the next video is the final video, and I hope you've really enjoyed watching this. As I've said on all of the videos, I'm trying to show you the processes for those people that care about them. If you don't care about processes, just skip to the last one and watch the last couple of seconds. Anyway, you have a great day and thanks for watching. See you next time.